Yeah.
My name is John Smith with the Lexington Court Reporters Group, a member of the National Court Reporter Association. My business address is 606 West Main Street, Suite 130, Lexington, Kentucky 40502. This deposition is taking place on April 5th at 6 p.m. in the Lafferty Room at the University of Kentucky College of Law for the case of Monroe v. Derek Dawson and Copy Master Corporation. Before I swear the deponent in, would each person present please state his or her identity for the camera?
Tyler Mastin for the plaintiff.
Nick Hamming for the plaintiff.
Eric Bronco, plaintiff.
Nathan Goins for the defendant.
Ryan Stith for the defense.
Sarah Tipton for the defendant.
At this time, I'd like to swear in the deponent. Dr. Jones, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You may proceed.
Hello, Dr. Jones. My name is Tyler Mastin, and I represent Melissa Monroe. Have you ever been deposed before?
I have.
All right, just for your recollection, the court reporter will be taking down everything we say, so just speak truthful like as if you were on trial. Whenever you are talking, I'll try and not interrupt you if you'll give me the same courtesy. Please try and answer each question out loud without nodding so that the court reporter can get everything down. If you don't understand a question that I am asking you, please feel free to ask and I'll try and rephrase it. If at any time you need a break, please let me know. We can take a short break. Your lawyer can object to any of my questions, but unless your lawyer expressly tells you not to answer, you still have to answer. Finally, are you taking any medications that might affect your ability to recall events or to testify?
I am not.
Perfect. Dr. Jones, where did you get your undergraduate degree from?
I got my undergrad from Sanford University.
Okay. Where did you get your PhD in clinical psychology?
I got that from the University of Southern New York.
Excellent. How long have you been practicing clinical psychology for?
I have been practicing clinical psychology since 1985.
Great. I'm handing you right now what has been preliminarily marked as Exhibit 1. This is a copy of your curriculum vitae. Do you recognize this list?
I do.
Does it accurately represent your education and publications?
It does.
Can you please tell me the names of your last few publications?
Let's see, there is Identifying Manglers, a critical tool for employers. It was in the Forensic Psychology magazine, 2009. Next would be Crazy Like a Fox, how employees have become savvy about psychological disabilities under the ADA. That was in the Independent Psychology Eval Journal in 2007. And then the last one here looks like 10 simple questions to ask prospective employees to determine mental health in the Human Research Board, quarterly in 2002.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jones. Are you currently working on any new publications at this time?
I have a few, but nothing that I'm ready to disclose.
Okay. Is it true that you have testified over 250 times in the last decade?
It is. I did 150 of those, of course, were for the plaintiff, and 100 of those were for the defendant.
Okay, and about how much do you charge for each one of your testimonies?
I charge $1,500 for independent psychological evaluations, and then $1,000 per day for my testimonies.
Alrighty. I am handing you right now what has been preliminarily marked as Exhibit 2. This is a copy of your response to your attorney with your expert opinion on Ms. Monroe. Feel free to look over it and let me know if that's true or not.
Yes, all of this is true.
Okay. How much time did you spend with Ms. Monroe during this evaluation?
Our evaluation lasted 2 hours.
Okay. And did you personally evaluate her? Did you have one of your associates or your staff members do it?
I personally evaluated her.
Okay. Were you also given the report of a Dr. Alan Smithers?
I was.
Okay, and your attorney is the one that asked you to meet with Ms. Monroe, correct?
Correct.
Was the reason to determine the accuracy of Dr. Smithers' report on Ms. Monroe suffering from PTSD?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yes. Was the reason that your attorney asked you to meet with Ms. Monroe to determine the accuracy of Dr. Smithers' report on Ms. Monroe suffering from PTSD?
It was.
Okay, did you agree with Dr. Smithers' report?
I feel that there were a few tests that were missing out of his report.
Okie dokie. If you think there are a few tests missing, then why exactly, or I'm sorry, I got confused. You're saying that you don't agree with Dr. Smithers' report then, that Ms. Monroe is suffering from PTSD?
I feel that there needs to be further evaluation as far as her state of PTSD, if she in fact does have it or she does not.
Okay. So is it possible that Dr. Smithers is correct in his evaluation of Ms. Monroe?
I feel that there are more tests that would actually prove more accurately that she would have it, rather than a personal evaluation or a personal observation of and testimony that he provided.
Okay. Then would you agree that without relying on any of these tests or similar tests like you put in your answer to your attorney, that it is inappropriate to draw conclusions in regard to whether a patient suffers from PTSD?
I would say that's pretty accurate.
Okay. Why did you not have Ms. Monroe take any of these tests when you evaluated her?
Most of the tests do take much longer than just 2 hours. The personal evaluation or my 2 hours with her, of course, went over her daily duties, her past employment history, and the reasons why she is not able to obtain a job at this point.
Okay, so with your 2-hour interview, you don't believe that Ms. Monroe would be a patient that is considered suffering from PTSD?
I don't have enough information to conclude that she does not, or that she does have PTSD. My personal opinion, though, is that she describes her daily activities of going out and running errands, and meeting with friends. People who have PTSD normally have issues leaving the house. She is very outward and bubbly, calm. People with PTSD don't show those qualities either.
Were you aware that Dr. Smithers and his associates have been meeting with Ms. Monroe for a couple of years now?
I was not aware of that.
Okay. Well, if you had more time, if you would have administered the test to Ms. Monroe, do you believe that you could more accurately have determined whether or not she suffered from PTSD than a simple observation alone?
I did.
Okay. And finally, just to reiterate, why was the reason that you said you didn't administer these tests? I'm sorry.
In the 2 hours or a 2-hour session, it does take longer to evaluate or run the test. So like post-traumatic stress disorder scale, that test does take a series. It is a series of, excuse me, I'm going to refer to the material here. The post-traumatic stress disorder scale is a test of 49 items that measures the sensitivity of one related incident. So it does take a lot more than just the 2 hours, just for that test example.
Did you not think it would be appropriate to meet with her again and administer any of these tests?
I mean, at this time, I would have said that I probably would have liked to meet with her more. I would have been able to determine yes or no on that. But again, just a 2-hour session was what I was given with Ms.
Just one more question. Without the test, do you think it's possible with more observation and more time with Miss Monroe, you would be able to draw an inference on whether she suffered from PTSD, or do you think it's only with the test?
I think with more time with Miss Monroe, I'd be able to determine whether she would need the test or not. However, I mean, the tests are a surefire way to know that she does have PTSD.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Jones. That's all the questions I have for now.
Thank you.
So Dr. Jones, I just have a few follow-up questions for you. Let's go back to your education just to make sure that we all have it all in the record. Where did you get your bachelor's degree from?
It's at Stanford University,
And what about your master's?
University of Southern Root.
Okay. And that's where you got your PhD as well, is that
Correct.
okay? And then you said that you have been practicing since 1985. What was your first job that you held?
So my first job was, I was hired as an assistant of psychology, and I was also a clinical psychologist at the University of Kentucky, and I taught some classes as well.
Okay. So could you just describe your responsibilities? So you say you taught classes, and then what else did you do?
I taught classes, and I was an assistant to the professor as well.
Okay. And then what was your next occupation after that?
Starting in 1995, I opened my own practice, which was called the Psychology Associates Incorporated in the capital city of Newton.
And do you see patients on a regular basis?
I do.
And about how many patients do you think you see a day?
I mean, it's hard to tell. Some days more than other, but at least 10 or so.
Okay. And how many articles do you have published?
I currently have 3 articles published, and they are within the peer-reviewed magazines and journals.
Okay. And so are these articles well known throughout your profession?
They are.
And where are you certified to practice clinical psychology?
I'm certified in the state of New York and the state of Kentucky as well.
And prior to this case, have you ever been hired by our firm before?
I have not.
And you spoke to this a little bit, but again, just how many times, when you have been hired as an expert witness, how many times have you testified for the plaintiff and how many times for the defendant?
It was 150 times for the plaintiff and 100 times for the defendant.
So let's just talk a little bit about your interview with Melissa Monroe. So how long was this interview?
It was only a 2-hour session.
And that's typical for an independent medical examination, is that right?
It is.
Okay. And how did you conduct your interview?
I asked her questions that were based on her experience at Copymaster, and I asked her about her daily activities and such. I also asked her about the report from Dr. Smithers as well.
And is it typical to obtain a report or history of the patient just so that you have some background knowledge before you meet with them?
Yes, that way I know where to go from as far as what to ask and such.
And what were your observations of Melissa Monroe that led you to the conclusion that there was an insufficient basis to determine that she suffered from PTSD?
She was very alert and well engaged in our conversations. Her demeanor was very cheerful and calm. She described in great detail her daily routines, her leaving the house and going on errands and meeting with friends.
So from these observations, you were not inclined to say that she had PTSD?
From these observations alone, I would say that she was not.
And So what observations of Monroe led you to the conclusion that any harm she suffered was insignificant?
Whenever I asked her about the harm that she had suffered, she became very withdrawn, and her demeanor changed, and she did not describe in great detail. Like whenever I asked her about the reasons why she had not been able to obtain a job at this time, she could not give me exact places that she had applied for and such like that.
And so you testified a second ago that you relied on Dr. Elaine Smithers' assessment, but you also relied on your observations of Dr. Monroe, or of Melissa Monroe. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And why specifically was Dr. Elaine Smithers' assessment of Monroe flawed?
Well, because typically whenever you state that someone has PTSD, there have to be tests run to specifically pinpoint the reasons why a person has PTSD.
Okay. And these tests went beyond the scope of your independent medical examination.
Correct. They take quite some time to actually assess.
And is it standard in the practice for, as Mr. Mastin asked you and said, because they had been evaluating her for so long, is it standard in the practice to administer these tests?
They should have in order to draw a sound conclusion as to whether she had PTSD or not, in my personal opinion.
So how certain are you, from the standpoint of a psychologist, that there was not enough evidence to say that Monroe had PTSD?
I'm very confident in the fact that, again, she was very detail-oriented about her daily activities, and then she was very alert and bubbly until, of course, I questioned her about the incidents, and then again questioned her about her seeking a new job. Typically, whenever a person has PTSD, they are not bubbly. They are not, they actually have issues leaving the house.
No further questions.
Okay, I just had two questions real quick. You said that you're fairly confident that Miss Monroe does not suffer from PTSD, correct?
At this time, I cannot conclude that.
But you yourself never actually administered these tests that you're talking about.
Correct.
That's all.
This concludes the deposition of Lin Jones for the case of Monroe v. Derek Dawson and Copy Master Corporation.